Clearance in 7 by Seamus Heaney, in memoriam to MKM. And as we can see already, this is going to be an elegy in its form. It's dedicated to Seamus Heaney's mother. If we look at the actual structure of the poem, it has 14 lines, which should be telling you it is a sonnet. This particular sonnet is a Petrarchan sonnet, which is more of the traditional type of Italian sonnet that we would expect. And again, he deals with themes of maternal, paternal, husband and wife, the loss. And he also, and I'll be giving you more details of this, he processes this in what we would call a very metaphysical way. The very title, Clearances, do not be confused by Clearance in 7. It's just that there are many of these, and we are focused on one of the poems in this collection. So if we think about the idea of the title, Clearances, again, a metaphysical idea that a life, once it's lived, has departed the earth and cleared way for other experiences and indeed other people. So if we look at the first couple of lines, and again, it's an idea while we're still on the topic of Petrarchan sonnets, to divide the sonnet into the octet, the 8 lines, and then the sestet, the remaining 6, and to bear in mind that there will be what we call a volta that separates those two, and that's when you should be looking for a full stop at the end of your 8 lines for the octave. And then we have a huge change in tone. So if we run through the first few lines here, in the last minutes he said more to her. So we can see here that this is the third person. And Heaney is creating a character, and that character is his father. So we see this poem from the point of view, not just of Heaney, but from the point of view of the character that he has used to get his thoughts and feelings on death and the associated emotions across to the reader. So in the last minutes, he said more to her, almost than in all her life together. And again, highly poignant language where he's referring basically to what we would call a deathbed scene. And this is very vivid imagery. This is reinforced by his use of direct speech. You'll be in New Row on Monday night and I'll come up for you and you'll be glad. When I walk in the door, isn't that right? And again, he isn't directing this personal pronoun towards the reader. He's directing it towards his wife. So the flashback sequence in which, again, he uses his father conversation with the mother. It is notable the use of the ellipsis for a pause. And again, this builds a sense of the gravity of the situation. And also the father trying to contain his thoughts. Isn't that right? The use of rhetorical question, again, is more to reassure him, perhaps, than his dying partner. In the following lines, his head was bent down to her propped up head. We get the physical situation of death, and we get a real sense of intimacy, the closeness that they enjoyed. This is really, I suppose, a metaphor for their married life and the intimacy that they shared as a couple. And the reader gets the sense that they were married for a considerable amount of time. And again, contextually, that is true. They had a very long marriage and had 8 children. So she could not hear, but we were overjoyed. And a bit of a shift here in terms of the point of view, because now we get the sort of deathbed scene really powerfully illustrated to us, because we get the sense that the children are involved in this as much as the father. And we get now the idea that they are listening to what is the end of a life, but also the end of a relationship. He called her good and girl. And again, the way the syntax of that sentence, good and girl, has a real sense of intimacy about it as well. It's almost the father has adopted a paternal attitude towards his wife. Her helplessness, her deathbed scene, has given him a sense of affection and a caring attitude towards the mother of his children and himself as her husband of many years. It's also interesting to note that, again, the use of the collective pronoun we, and we get the sense that the family are all involved here. Again, then she was dead. While this isn't a short sentence, Heaney deliberately makes it an end-stopped sentence through the use of the comma. And again, this simplistic language is more profound. It has more of a resounding effect on the reader. The searching for a pulse beat was abandoned. And again, the sense that it is over. There's nothing more can be done for this woman. And we all knew one thing by being there, that the space we stood around had been emptied. And this is a direct reference to the title Clearances. Into us to keep it penetrated, clearances that suddenly stood open. And again, this is a metaphysical attitude in so much as Heaney is following in the traditions of metaphysical poetry, which show that human life is quite ephemeral. It moves on, and we're only all here for a short, very short time when you consider the length and the time of the universe, and indeed that the universe will keep continuing, the earth will keep spinning when we're all gone. The final line, high cries were felled and pure change happened. Again, quite a lot of analysis in this line. The high cries were felled. Again, one thinks of that verb felled, and we think of a forest. We think of a forest being cleared, and again, another reference to the title. And a pure change happened. I think it's very interesting to note the adjective pure, in so much as this has been a moment of cleansing, a moment of ironic renewal. As one person has died, there now is room for others to have their life on the earth. The best way to really understand this poem is perhaps to get, and you should all have, a definition of what metaphysical poetry is. And again, Heaney uses lots of affectionate, observational language during this sonnet. And that's really about it. Just going to add a few little notes to this. We have the volta here, and again, the use of third person, and again, the idea of a long life together. The use of direct speech. And again, suggestion of intimacy. And the idea of emptied is a reference to clearances. Suggestion of the forest at the idea of felled, forest clearing. And again, the positive adjective of renewal. And again, this metaphysical philosophy. And again, it's an elegy and a Petrarchan sonnet. Okay, so if you just look at your notes that you should have in Google Classroom and the annotations that we've made. Thank you.